Clear Voices of Hope is a powerful collection of voices from For the Love of Cups, Clear Pathways program, dedicated to raising awareness about the realities of dense breast tissue and breast cancer. Through honest conversations and personal stories, we amplify the voices of women who have faced these challenges firsthand, sharing their journeys, fears, triumphs, and lessons learned along the way. Each episode brings you closer to the lived experiences of survivors, advocates, and caregivers, while also featuring leading experts in breast health and women's health. Together, we break down the barriers, provide vital education, and empower listeners to make informed decisions about their own breast health. Whether you're navigating your own diagnosis, supporting a loved one, or passionate about women's health equity, Clear Voices of Hope is your source for real stories, reliable information, and a supportive community. Join us as we shine a light on the path to early detection, better care, and hope for every woman. Tiana Bowman, thank you so much. I'm really excited and thrilled and honored to have you here on the Clear Voices of Hope series to enlighten us and share with us your personal journey of diagnosis, dense breast tissue, and the work that you've been led to from that experience into the world today that really, the foundation being your part of the story in your journey and being pushed into menopause before you were ready, and what that experience was like and what you're doing now with that information to help other women in your position. So for so many reasons, I am so excited for this conversation because I just know how impactful it's going to be, how many women are going to be helped by it. And I just am genuinely so interested to know more about you. I feel so lucky to be able to sit down with you and get to know you. It's one of my favorite things about being a host is that I get to meet incredible women like you. And so I'm excited to dive in. I want to give you an opportunity to just say hello, introduce yourself, give us a little bit of a background about how we ended up here, and then we'll get started and we'll dig in a little bit more.
Okay, yeah, I am so happy to be here. I feel very lucky. I love what you're doing with your show by showcasing, the experience of other women who have unfortunately shared this journey together. And I know that, the common thread that we have is a tough one, but I just love hearing the diversity of the stories that you're bringing through, because I have been going down this path for almost 9 years since my first diagnosis, and I feel like I learn something new every day. And when I listen to what you're putting out in the world, that the same is true. I'm continually learning things, and so I'm really happy to be here with you. And we have crisscrossed a little bit virtually. I know that we're going to be meeting in person soon through the Women's Health Advocates, and have a shared passion for amplifying the stories of breast cancer survivors as survivors. And so I just feel really lucky to be here with you today, and just really appreciate you inviting me on. So yeah. Happy to be here.
The feeling is mutual. And like you said, none of us really wanted to be here. We got thrown into this network of women that we probably wouldn't have sought out if it wasn't for a diagnosis like this. But at the same time, so grateful because I've got to meet some really incredible women through this journey. It's brought me into a club I never wanted to join, but I also never want to leave. And so I'm really grateful. And I think it's really just the most powerful thing we can do is share our stories and come together and amplify those voices, because that's how we make changes and how we spare others from having to face a similar circumstance, and at the very least, not have to face it alone.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So I'm so curious if you don't mind backing up for a little bit with me here and sharing what your life was like just before you got diagnosed, and what led you to think that something might be wrong, that you needed to go get checked out, that led you to discover that you had breast cancer, because at the age of 35, so young, but also women aren't typically being screened at that age, and even sometimes when they feel like they want to be or need to be, they get denied or turned away, or dismissed because, you know, the idea of you being too young to need that or for it to be possible. So I'm just kind of curious what that was like for you and what led you to getting the screening that you definitely needed, and thank goodness you did.
Yeah. I had a very active lifestyle before I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I had just had my daughter and finished nursing her. I nursed her for a year, and at the end of that year, when my breast deflated, which is totally normal, I was just kind of rushing through a shower, and during that shower, I felt a lump on my left breast, and I thought that it was strange. It felt really like cliche to feel a lump even when I wasn't looking for it, because it did have kind of that feeling of a soft pee. But I completely ignored it because I don't have a history of breast cancer. My mom didn't have it. My grandmother didn't have it. And it wasn't on my radar, and it didn't seem like something that I needed to pay attention to immediately. And so when I first felt the lump, I ignored it. It scared me, and I ignored it. But then maybe 2 months or so later, I started to lose hair on the crown of my head, and in vain. And so I booked a dermatology appointment like immediately to get that hair loss looked at. And when I booked that dermatology appointment, I felt a twinge of guilt because I knew in the back of my mind that I still had this lump that hadn't gone away, and I knew that I should get it checked. And the only reason why I wound up actually booking an appointment was because my friend is my gynecologist, and I had no reason not to go in and just have it looked at. And so I went in and had my normal gynecology exam, and my gynecologist told me that the lump felt like it could be a benign cyst or something like that, but she gave me a referral to a mammogram just to get it checked and just to be sure. And so I took the referral, and I just thought, okay, I'll get to it when I get to it. And I didn't book my mammogram until about 6 months later. And so by that time I was 35, and when I booked it, I just kind of looked at it as an annoying to-do list type of thing. I even brought my daughter with me to the appointment, just thinking that she could sit in her car seat while I got things done. But I was sent home, and I had to come back a week later without her, so I was really frustrated to even be there. But once I got the mammogram, the technician said that she asked if I had a little bit of extra time to get an ultrasound as well, because what was seen on the mammogram was somewhat clear. I have dense breast tissue. I was only 35, and that's normal for younger women. And so I went in for an ultrasound, and it was very apparent on the look of the ultrasound technician's face that something was going on. And they asked if I would be open to getting a biopsy that same day as well, a fine needle biopsy that same day. And I tried to keep it together. I cried right in that moment. They couldn't say that anything was going on, but everything kind of made it apparent that something was happening. And so it was a shock to be diagnosed at such a young age, especially with all of the denial that I had going on in my mind. But it happened, and it was tough.
Wow. Oh God, there's so many things I want to highlight there, because I mean, here you are, a new mom, right? You've been breastfeeding for a year. Like, so many things can be easily dismissed or looked over, like, okay, maybe it's mastitis, or maybe it's this, maybe my breasts are changing anyways, right? Because you've been pregnant and then nursing, and now they're kind of settling in back to normal. They're losing some volume, and there's a lot of changes already happening. And then, that moment in the shower that you do hear a lot, and I suppose we hear it a lot because it is common as a way to find something that's unusual, that isn't within your realm or scope of normal, a big change in your breast. But the desire to have that not be true is so strong, that desire to deny it and be like, I'm too busy, I've got 2 little kids, I'm too young, all these things. And like you said, you even had to come back. Like, it takes a lot of due diligence to even get to that point, even when supposedly things are working right. Like, the referral was fairly easy for you to get from your gynecologist, who was also your friend, which sometimes that's not the case. The fact that they were so willing to just like take you straight from the mammogram to the ultrasound, also not usually the case. But I think when that is the case, and I know that was true in my situation too, I knew something was up. It wasn't just dense breast tissue. There was something more that was going on. And I feel for you in that moment, because you're alone. You didn't know that you were going to expect anything. You've also probably got somebody else taking care of your kids. And so you're just like, you're between 2 worlds, and you're just so confused and caught off guard. It's a very surreal moment. And you're also just kind of vulnerable and alone and not even sure what to make of it in a moment like that. So I really feel for you. It takes me right back there. I'm curious, did they end up doing the biopsy that same day?
They did. And it was everything that you said. And it takes me back just thinking about it. It was such a scary day because, like you said, I was trying so hard to deny that it could be anything. I had dropped my kids off at my grandparents' house, told them it would be a quick appointment. And I was busy planning my son's 4th birthday the next day. And they did the biopsy, and I just remember them telling me that I was going to be a little bit sore and not to lift anything too heavy after the appointment. But I was thinking, I have to pick up my daughter right after this, and I'm not going to freak my grandparents out and tell them what happened, because I'm still processing this. On the way home to pick up my kids, I just remember thinking, nope, there's no way, no. Even though it was clear and I could see on the screen that there was a small mass, I was just, it was just such utter confusion. Like, my world had flipped so fast and I didn't even know how to process it. But I recognize that story is very unique, unfortunately, that a lot of women are not pushed through same day, essentially, to understand what's happening. And I also benefited from having my friend be my gynecologist. That's completely atypical, and that span of 72 hours was excruciating, but I had the systems work for me, which a lot of women don't have.
Yeah, so even when the system was working, it's still very uprooting and confusing, and I would love for you to have had some support on that day, because you just don't, there's nothing that can prepare you for that. And like you said, you're not even quite sure who to reach out to in a moment like that. And then also getting on with your day, right? You've got your grandparents you're going to go see and a birthday party to plan, and then suddenly figuring out how you're going to do this now that you've also got to not lift anything. And of course, that's all you do all day as a new mom. Like, wow, you're like, wait a minute, how is any of this supposed to work now? So what happened next? I think you have something about a recurrence as well. Yeah. And so, I'm very curious about what happened there. for you?
Yeah, after getting the diagnosis, everything just went into warp speed, and I was able to get seen and schedule time for a double mastectomy. I had hormone positive, HER2 negative breast cancer. And it was late stage 1, but moderately aggressive. And so I went through chemo for 4 rounds afterwards and took tamoxifen because I was still premenopausal, and that is a very common course of treatment. I was on tamoxifen for just over 4 years, and was in a new job and had kind of moved on with my life for the better, and was really grateful for that. And it was shortly before turning 40 when I was just working to get back in shape again, that I had a really hard workout, and I was super sore afterwards, and the soreness subsided everywhere in my body except for my left breast again, and near the point where I had my breast cancer removed. And I thought that was really strange because I also had reconstruction and didn't have breast tissue. But right. I did an intentional self breast exam and felt a lump again. Wow. In almost the same place that I initially felt it. And I just knew. I knew at that time what it was. So it was like polar opposite, where I was in full-on denial to absolute clarity that I had cancer again, and it actually took a while to be seen again. So the systems actually didn't work as well for me when I had my recurrence as they did with my initial diagnosis. I actually had to wait multiple times and come back for multiple appointments with my oncologist at the time before I finally got a referral for a mammogram, and I was denied a referral for an ultrasound, but finally got that referral as well, and was confirmed that I did have a recurrence. And so that process was harder to actually deal with than the first one, and that was right around the time I turned 40. So it was just interesting to have experienced the first go round and have everything run so smoothly, but then the second go round have to really push and advocate to get the referrals that I needed, and to finally get the diagnosis that confirmed.
Which is really mind-blowing, because here we already know that, like, you're not even just high risk, like, you are already an established breast cancer patient. Yeah. Just needing follow-up. So it's mind-blowing, but it's not the first time I've heard that either. But it still just is shocking to me to believe that could be the case. And I'm so sorry, like the horror of like feeling that lump again, and this time knowing exactly what you're signing up for. You've been through it, what's around the corner, and just like that feeling of like, I really just do not want to do this again. But you've got the power in you, and you know that you can, and you know that you've got kids, and so you're going to. What happened then? So was the treatment very similar?
So the process was a little bit different the second go around. I initially had a double mastectomy, but for my recurrence, I had a partial mastectomy, and so the tumor was accessible for my medical team, and they were able to remove it. And what my surgical biopsy showed was that I didn't have breast tissue, but the cancer had actually come back in my chest wall and in my skin. And so it could have been a little bit of residual tumor. We don't know. I never got a clear answer for why, because with my double mastectomy, my margins were clear. I did have lymphovascular invasion, but with chemo and tamoxifen, that should have killed everything. we don't know exactly why it came back, but the grade and type of cancer was the same again. So it was hormone positive and HER2 negative, and still moderately aggressive. But at that point, my course of treatment was to get full chest radiation to try and zap out any remaining cancer tumors, and then to go on Verzenio for 2 years, an oral chemo pill. And because the cancer was hormone positive, I then started ovarian suppression. I had the option to either remove my ovaries or suppress them, and worked with my oncology team to start doing monthly ovarian suppression shots and take an aromatase inhibitor. So I've been on that course for almost 4 years now.
Wow, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you for explaining that. And especially with the hormone positive recurrence and your next line of defense, the oral chemo and then ovarian suppression. Now you're addressing your ovaries because of the hormone production that comes from the ovaries, and just see how it doesn't just end with the breasts, even though it hasn't necessarily spread anywhere else, but now you're having to look at your ovaries and how they're functioning, deciding to suppress the hormone so that it doesn't feed the cancer, in the hopes that this is going to prevent another recurrence, which we pray that that's the thing that does prevent another recurrence. But it's not an easy choice to make. Of course, that's what you want, but it's still going to affect so many things about your life and the way we feel. This is pushing you into now menopause, which I know you've got a lot to say, so I'm very interested to get into that piece of the conversation, because this does happen to so many women that get diagnosed with hormone positive breast cancer, that I don't think a lot of people really talk about, especially for younger women like yourself who wouldn't normally be going through menopause at such a young age. There's not a lot of discussion around that, or even how to prepare for that, or what that would be like, and what that would be like for someone so young to then go through it. Yeah, so I'm just wondering if you could help me, understand what that was like for you.
Yeah, it was really hard, and actually going through medically induced menopause because of my ovarian suppression is what changed the course of my life, and is really what's bringing us together now, because to your point, there were not a ton of conversations about menopause just 4 years ago, which seems crazy because now everyone is talking about menopause, which is a wonderful thing. But when I started ovarian suppression, the way that it was discussed in my doctor's appointments was, we're going to reduce the risk of another recurrence, so we're just going to either remove your ovaries or do ovarian suppression, and you'll be in menopause, and we'll handle the side effects as they come. And I thought, okay, yeah, fine, hot flashes, I get it. But when I started ovarian suppression, overnight, I was dealing with raging hot flashes, like every hour. I lost the ability to sleep through a night because I was having night sweats. I was super uncomfortable. My joints started feeling achy, and within a month or so of starting ovarian suppression, I started feeling dizzy. I later learned that it was just benign vertigo that can happen with menopausal symptoms, and I was having heart palpitations. I was having brain fog. I was losing my words during meetings and just questioning my value as an employee and a contributor, and it threw me off because there were so many symptoms that weren't talked about, and I was thinking my life is fundamentally different than it was just a couple months ago, and it's also very different from what I imagined it would be as a survivor and as a 40-year-old at the time. And you're right. Hormone deprivation is one of the most common treatment protocols for hormone-sensitive cancers, which it should be. It makes a lot of sense, but there are more women under 50 who are being diagnosed with hormone-sensitive breast cancers. And really the number of women under 50 with breast cancer is rising faster than the number of women over 50 who are being diagnosed with breast cancer. And so I think as we reconcile necessary treatment, hormone deprivation, but also the fact that early screening tools are getting better, which is wonderful, and survival rates are improving, which is also wonderful. I think we also need to reconcile what quality of life after treatment looks like for younger survivors, because I felt completely lonely and isolated. And I also felt very guilty talking about those feelings because I have such a supportive family and friend network, and complaining about what I was struggling through from a physical and a mental standpoint due to menopause that everyone goes through eventually just didn't seem okay. But the more that I learned, I did realize that, younger cancer survivors are experiencing menopause in more severe ways. And I think having more attention brought to that and talking through potential solutions and ways to help with, quality of life after treatment is really important. And that's where my passion has come in.
Well, yeah, I mean, I just want to thank you because the bigger menopause conversation, it's having a moment, right? It's definitely taken off over the last couple of years, but that still doesn't necessarily address younger women with menopause, and especially younger cancer survivors with menopause who are being medically induced into menopause at a very young age, but also very abruptly. Like there's no gradual introduction into menopause. It hits overnight almost, and your body's not really anticipating it at that point. So it's a big disruption, just not only for you, but also for your body, and just trying to then figure out how do you find yourself again in that? Where do you start having those conversations and looking for better solutions and ways to address some of those symptoms, because they're kind of coming so quickly at some point.
Right. Yeah. It's really hard because for me at least, even when I finished chemo, my cycle came back, and while I was on tamoxifen, I was still very regular. And so the only experience with typical perimenopausal types of symptoms were the ones that I got from tamoxifen, and that was neck up hot flashes, but those went away, and so I had no familiarity with it. And it's just like what you mentioned, it was like taking a complete 180 from a symptom standpoint, and my body and my mind were just so confused, like what is happening? And I think it's really tough. And with younger survivors, I had the privilege of and the choice of having my kids before my diagnosis. But as we think about medically induced menopause and what that means from a fertility standpoint, and what it means from a dating standpoint, and all of the changes that come along with it, the experience of younger survivors is very unique, but it can be really tough to talk about outside of the sacred group of survivors. But I think that the broader population needs to know that, especially since these menopause discussions are having their moment.
I know that this was something that became a passion of yours to find more women to connect with, to talk to also create more opportunity for these conversations. And you have an organization that you've created, Pausitive Outlook, which I think is just incredible work. And I know it's coming from such a heart-centered, soul purpose-driven place. I would love to know what that evolution of that creation and that community was like and what you're doing now.
I have a lot of fun with it. So it started because after I was experiencing the sudden symptoms, I didn't really know how to put them together. And I brought them up to my care team, and I have a great care team. I don't want to misconstrue that. But even with bringing up the symptoms that I was having, it felt like the information that I was getting was very piecemeal. And so I started Googling everything as it came through and reading as many books as I could on menopause that were out there. I was reading the Menopause Manifesto, Menopause Boot Camp, Estrogen Matters. I was just trying to understand what was going on with my body, and the information that came from those books and listening to doctors on social media, just as a starting point to know where to route my questions, was really, really helpful. And I got to the point where I was learning so much that I kind of appointed myself a menopause evangelist, and I started talking to my friends about menopause because I'm like, hey, I know you don't think that anything is happening, but you all might be in perimenopause, and here's what's going to happen next, and we should learn about this. And I wanted to share the thoughts and the experiences that I was having, and so I started to blog about it, and that's kind of a old form platform, but I just had so much inside of me that I wanted to get out, and so I started blogging, and I called my blog Pausitive Outlook because my thinking was, it's spelled, pause like menopause, like I'm in this for the long haul. I'm not overly positive and thinking, roses and rainbows, but this is what my life is going to look like going forward. And there, from what I'm learning, are longer term risks and quality of life changes that I need to be prepared for. And so let me use this platform to share that message. And Pausitive Outlook was really a healing place for me and has evolved into a platform to support other women. And so where I focus the bulk of my attention with Pausitive Outlook is on the importance of early detection, because in both situations, I did find my breast cancer when it was early enough to treat, but without understanding early detection tools, survivorship rates go down. And so just talking about the importance of early detection, what tools to access, to understand how to do self-breast exams is something that I focus on and I use my platform for. I also focus on sharing menopause resources via events. A friend of mine and I started hosting intimate events where I would bring in experts and medical professionals to talk about what the menopause journey can look like and to connect the guests with products and books and just clinicians who can help navigate or help guide them along the journey. And I just felt that it was really important for us to share stories like we're doing now, because with having more open conversations, especially in comfortable settings, I think we can really feel more confident about being our own advocates and taking our health into our own hands in order to have improved outcomes. So, the early breast detection, menopause resources via events, and then advocacy and volunteering with other organizations that are doing amazing things from breast health standpoint is where I use my platform, because I think we should all know that there are amazing organizations who are bringing together younger survivors, who are mobilizing, political leaders like the women's health advocates that we're both a part of, to sign on to supporting research and ensuring that there is work to continue to support cures. So Pausitive Outlook has allowed me to do more than I would have ever thought, and has really opened up the world to me and brought in such wonderful relationships and connection points. And I hope that going forward it continues to serve as a resource, for women who are trying to understand what menopause looks like for them as survivors, and what they can do to improve their longer term quality of life.
Yeah. Wow. So good. I have so many questions. I'm kind of curious though, when you were going through this journey and you thought, oh my gosh, now I'm becoming a menopause evangelist, which you said, I love that term actually. Because, you are looking back to like even some of these perimenopause symptoms for 35-year-old women. And I know that is part of the bigger conversation, is that women aren't really thinking about it until their late 40s or 50s, but really we need to rewind that thinking and that way of thinking, I guess I should say, and to see how early it actually can start affecting you. So I'm curious what you would say to the average 35-year-old woman, what you learned on that journey, as far as what perimenopause looks like and how you could start supporting yourself even then.
Yeah, I that's a great question. I think listening to our bodies is of the utmost importance, and not just listening, but understanding that changes aren't a bad thing. It's natural. This is what life can look like. But going to our doctors and sharing those changes is really important. I think for the average 35-year-old, if you notice that glass of wine isn't sitting with you the way that it used to, or that there are some changes that are happening from a weight standpoint, and not being able to do some of the things that maybe you were able to do just 2-3 years before, or that your cycle is changing and it feels a little bit different. That could be perimenopause, and going in and talking to your doctor about those changes and how they're making you feel physically and mentally are important, because it at least gets the dialogue going, and it helps to make you more of the captain in your own journey. And I think that that's okay. I've noticed with a lot of the conversations that are happening around perimenopause, they feel really negative and like aging is a bad thing, but it's not. It's natural. It's the best thing. And I think that if we're just aware of how our bodies are changing earlier on, then we can make better choices. Because, while we're connected because of breast cancer, 1 in 8 women are diagnosed with breast cancer over their lifetime. From a broader standpoint, 1 in 3 women have heart disease. And that risk and incidence increases significantly once menopause sets in. And so I think understanding more about perimenopause and some of the changes that are going on in our bodies and the changes we can make from a lifestyle standpoint are going to make our long-term quality of life better. Like, just don't be afraid to lean into the changes and ask questions.
I love that so much. I'm wondering, for women like yourself that are facing a medically induced menopause, what you recommend for someone in that situation as far as helping themselves navigate this.
Yeah. I think for younger survivors, our first line of action should always be talking to our oncology team and gynecologists, because they are the expert partners in how we can manage the changes that come with medically induced menopause. For the majority of breast cancer survivors, systemic hormone treatment isn't an option, but there are some localized treatments that can be an option. And so talking to your oncology team, your gynecologist, about what could work for you based on your symptoms is very important. But I wouldn't stop there. I would highly recommend expanding your team. I think that the menopause journey is a far-reaching one, and it's going to potentially include acupuncturists, naturopaths, cardiologists, just depending on what's going on. And so requesting referrals and talking to your community is a great way to understand who's doing what. I would recommend, from a resource standpoint, visiting menopause.org for the Menopause Society, the National Menopause Foundation. Both of those have resources around which doctors are certified menopause providers. The American Cancer Society, breast cancer, .org are great resources as well for just understanding what the menopausal journey can look like for the breast cancer survivor. And then from a community standpoint, there are a lot of wonderful organizations that focus on the journey of younger survivors. And this is all what I've learned recently, because I've gotten so deep into it. For the Breast of Us is a nonprofit that focuses on women of color who have been impacted by breast cancer. The Breasties is an amazing organization that focuses on the journey of women who have had gynecological or breast cancer and are under 45. I'm a part of a local organization called the Bay Area Young Survivors, and there's a very robust, community there that's sharing tips. So I would recommend, starting with oncologists and gynecologists, but not being afraid to expand your team of support and reaching out to community, because when we share what's working, what's not, what questions we have, I think it makes us all smarter about how to, make our own decisions and care for ourselves. It also makes our care providers smarter about how they can support us. So highly recommend going there. I provide access and links to these resources on my platform as well, so you can follow me on Instagram or TikTok at Positive Outlook, or visit my website as well, positiveoutlook.com.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. Those are some really wonderful resources. I'm familiar with all those organizations that you just mentioned, and they are truly the real deal. So definitely worth reaching out to. Absolutely follow along, on Instagram or TikTok, because you're just a wealth of inspiration and information. And I'm really grateful for this conversation today and taking us through this whole journey. I know it's not easy reliving all of it in 1 hour, but I'm grateful because I know how important it is to share this information. So I'm just really grateful for your time and your energy that you poured into this conversation today, and just feel really blessed to have had you here.
Thank you for having me. The feeling is 100% mutual, and what you're doing with your platform, with this series is so important. And so I also feel very, very honored and just lucky to know you now, and to be a part of the change that you're creating. And I just think that it's such a blessing and incredible thing that, we're able to use this horrible life experience to hopefully, to your point, and you said it perfectly earlier, make things a little bit easier for, the person coming after us. Because I remember when I was first diagnosed, being connected to friends of friends and, sisters of friends, and just thinking to myself, if I can pay it forward, oh man, like I so want to do that. And I just feel like you've created that platform to